Chapter 1. They say pain makes you stronger, but sometimes it just makes you numb. I guess I'm somewhere in between. In between life and death. My story is like most stories. But how did it all happen? And how is it all gonna end? The morning air was crisp, carrying the faintest hint of dew and pine, but I barely noticed it. My legs moved mechanically through the woods, my hands buried deep in the pockets of my worn jacket. The forest had always been my escape, a place where the towering trees whispered ancient secrets, and the ground beneath my feet felt solid, dependable. Unlike people, and I mean it with scorn, I stopped at my favorite spot, a small clearing where the sunlight spilled like liquid gold between the branches. It was beautiful, but even beauty felt hollow now. It felt like nothing to me. I lowered myself to the ground, knees brushing against the damp grass, and pulled out my journal. My fingers trembled slightly as I flipped to a blank page. The words came slowly at first, hesitant, like they were afraid of being seen or scared of what I will use them for. 'Cause I had pain, real pain, in my heart, and I needed to let it out. Day 62 without Ben. I should be over this by now. Shouldn't I? But every time I close my eyes, I see his face. Not the face of the boy who kissed me under the moonlight, but the face of the man who told me he'd found someone else. What a way to leave. What are the worst ways a man can break up with you? A man that you planned your life with. Worst case to all this, a human. He didn't even have the decency to make it hurt less. Just told me and walked away. I guess that's what you do when you never really cared to begin with. I paused, the pen hovering above the page, and exhaled shakily. Am I pathetic for still writing about him? Maybe. But who else do I have? My parents. They're just ghosts now, faces I'm starting to forget. I lost them when I was young. I barely got a chance to experience family. My aunts. Sure, they took me in, but I was just another mouth to feed. They didn't hug me when I cried or tuck me in at night. They didn't love me. Not really. My grip on the pen tightened as a sharp, familiar ache settled in my chest. I'd been alone for so long, I thought I'd gotten used to it. And then Ben came along. When I met him, I thought the universe was finally cutting me some slack. He was charming, wild, and everything my broken little heart had been craving. He made me feel seen. For the first time in forever, I felt like I mattered. But now I realized I was just a placeholder, a pit stop on his way to something, someone better. But now, thinking about it, maybe there were others. Other girls while he was with me. I know I sound crazy, but you can't blame me. I was hurt, and I clawed at every possibility, looking for reasons to hate him more, so I could get over him and go on with my life. So here I am again, talking to a piece of paper like it's my therapist. I wonder if trees get tired of hearing my sob story. Maybe that's why the forest feels quieter lately. Even it's over me. I snapped the journal shut and leaned back, letting the sunlight warm my face. My wolf stirred restlessly inside me, a low, persistent hum in the back of my mind. She wanted to run, to hunt, to do something other than sit here wallowing in self-pity. But I wasn't ready to let her out. Not yet. You know when you've bonded with someone, and then they feel every hurt you feel? Yes, that was my wolf, and if I let it out, maybe I would show rage and cause damage. And that creates a whole complexity for me. And when I say for me, trust me, I needed to be good and not get into any trouble around here. A lot of thoughts ran through my mind. One very prevalent. You're not pathetic, a voice whispered from within, soft and almost pleading. My wolf rarely spoke, but when she did, it was hard to ignore her. She had a way of cutting through my self-doubt, even when I didn't want her to. Easy for you to say, I muttered under my breath. You don't have a broken heart. Kinda. It did and didn't at the same time. To many other questions I brought forth, the forest offered no reply, just the distant rustle of leaves and the occasional chirp of a bird. I closed my eyes, letting the sounds wash over me. For a moment, I allowed myself to imagine what it would feel like to be free of this heaviness, to laugh without it catching in my throat or smile without it feeling like a lie. But the moment was fleeting. Memories of my parents crept in uninvited. I could still see their faces, glimpses, as the edges were starting to blur. My mother's laughter, warm and rich like honey. My father's strong hands lifting me onto his shoulders. They were my world, and then one day they were gone. An accident, they said. Wrong place, wrong time. as if that made it easier to swallow, as if knowing it wasn't their fault would somehow fill the gaping hole they left behind. After their deaths, I bounced between my aunts like a bad penny. None of them wanted me. Not really. I was just an obligation, a reminder of the sister they'd lost. I learned quickly not to expect hugs or bedtime stories or I love yous. I became self-sufficient, quiet, and invisible, everything a good orphan should be. And then came Ben. I know I have said this a couple of times, but I really want you to see the picture here. And feel my pain. 'Cause why me? Ben was like a wildfire, burning bright and fast, and for a while I let myself get consumed. I let myself believe that maybe, just maybe, I'd found a home in him. But wildfires don't last. They burn out, leaving nothing but ash. Though this fire lasted for 2 good years. I thought losing my parents was the worst thing that could happen to me. But at least they didn't choose to leave. Ben did. A sharp crack of a branch pulled me from my thoughts. My head snapped up, my wolf bristling instantly. Someone was nearby. I scanned the trees, my senses on high alert. The forest had been safe for as long as I could remember, but with the rogue shifters causing trouble lately, you could never be too careful. "Hello," I called out, my voice steady despite the racing of my heart. No answer. I stood slowly, tucking the journal into my jacket. My eyes darted from shadow to shadow, my ears straining for any sound that didn't belong. A low growl escaped me unbidden. Whoever was out there better have a damn good reason for sneaking up on me. A figure stepped out from behind a tree, and my breath caught. For a split second I thought it was Ben. The same dark hair, the same cocky smirk. But as he moved closer, I realized it wasn't him. Relief flooded through me, quickly followed by annoyance. "Who are you?" I demanded, my voice sharp. "And why are you creeping around like some kind of stalker?" The man raised his hands in mock surrender, his grin widening. "Easy there, sweetheart. I'm not here to hurt you. Just passing through." "Passing through," I repeated, narrowing my eyes. "This is packed territory. You've got about 5 seconds to explain yourself before I call for backup." He chuckled, the sound low and unsettling. "Relax. I'm not a rogue if that's what you're worried about." "Then what are you?" I asked, taking a step closer. My wolf growled again, louder this time, but the man didn't seem fazed. "Let's just say I'm someone who's interested in keeping an eye on things around here," he said cryptically. "And you, Sage, you're quite the interesting one, aren't you?" My blood ran cold at the sound of my name. I'd never seen this man before in my life, and yet he spoke as if he knew me. My wolf snarled, ready to pounce, but something about the way he looked at me, like he was sizing me up, calculating, made me hesitate. "How do you know my name?" I demanded, my voice trembling slightly despite my best efforts to stay composed. The man tilted his head, his grin fading into something darker. "Let's just say I've been watching. You come here often, and weirdly you call your name when you write. And that's weirdly cute." Before I could respond, he turned and disappeared into the trees, leaving me standing there with more questions than answers. I really do not want no complications to my already complicated world, and I hope I never get to see this man. Chapter 2. Being an alpha is like carrying the world on your shoulders. Every smile, every command, every decision, it's all for them. But sometimes I wonder who will carry me. The morning sun bathed the village in a golden light, illuminating the cobblestone streets where shifters bustled about their daily routines. The scent of freshly baked bread mingled with the earthy aroma of the woods that bordered the pack's territory. The air hummed with life, and at the center of it all was Noah, walking down the main street. Noah exuded an effortless confidence. His tall frame, broad shoulders, and easy smile commanded attention without demanding it. He didn't have to say much. His presence alone spoke volume. Women paused mid-conversation as he passed, their cheeks flushing at the simple act of him nodding and saying, "Good morning." Some giggled, others whispered, but all of them watched him walk by with admiration in their eyes. Noah, of course, noticed. He always did, but he never let it go to his head. A polite nod here, a kind smile there, it was enough. He wasn't oblivious to the attention. He just had more pressing matters on his mind. As he reached the market square, a group of children playing tag spotted him and immediately abandoned their game to race toward him. "Alpha Noah," a small boy shouted, his voice filled with excitement. Noah crouched as they swarmed him, ruffling the hair of the boy who reached him first. "What's this? A pack of wild pups taking over my streets." The children laughed, their faces lighting up as they chattered about their games and how they planned to win the upcoming festival competition. Noah listened, genuinely interested, even though his mind was preoccupied with the day's responsibilities. A little girl tugged on his sleeve. "Alpha, are you really coming to watch us play at the festival?" Noah's smile softened. "Wouldn't miss it for the world. You keep practicing, all right?" The children cheered and ran off, their laughter echoing through the square. Noah straightened, his gaze following them for a moment. Interactions like these reminded him why he did what he did. The pack wasn't just his responsibility, it was his family. And every decision he made was for them. As he continued walking, an elderly woman carrying a heavy basket crossed his path. Without hesitation, Noah stepped forward, gently taking the basket from her hands. "Let me help you with that, Mrs. Calder," he said, his tone warm. The woman smiled up at him, her face lined with years of wisdom and kindness. "Thank you, Alpha. You're too good to us." "It's my job," Noah replied simply, carrying the basket to her stall. But deep down, he knew it was more than that. It wasn't just about duty, it was about love. He cared deeply for every member of his pack, from the youngest pup to the oldest elder. They were his people, and he would do anything to protect them. But even an alpha has his own burdens to bear. Later that afternoon, Noah stood on the porch of the pack house, gazing out at the horizon. The sprawling landscape stretched before him, a patchwork of forests and fields that seemed to go on forever. It was beautiful, serene, a stark contrast to the restlessness he felt inside. His wolf stirred, a low hum of energy thrumming through his mind. "She's out there," the wolf whispered, a voice both calming and insistent. Noah sighed, running a hand through his hair. "I know," he murmured aloud. "But when? How long do we have to wait?" The wolf didn't answer. It rarely did when it came to this topic. For years, Noah had trusted his wolf's instincts, leaning on its strength and guidance to lead the pack. But when it came to finding his fated mate, there was no aching void, no desperate longing. Just a quiet certainty that she existed and that fate would bring them together when the time was right. "You'll know her when you see her," his wolf had told him once. "You won't need to ask. You'll just know." And Noah believed that, but that didn't mean it wasn't frustrating. Every day, he saw couples around him, mates who had found each other and built lives together. He wasn't jealous, not exactly. He was happy for them, but it was a bittersweet happiness, tinged with the nagging question of when it would be his turn. He turned and walked inside, the heavy oak doors creaking shut behind him. The pack house was bustling with activity as always. Wolves came and went, discussing patrol schedules, resource distribution, and preparations for the upcoming festival. Noah moved among them, offering guidance where needed, settling disputes, and ensuring everything ran smoothly. But even as he immersed himself in his duties, part of his mind lingered on the thought of his mate. Who was she? Where was she? Would she understand the weight he carried as alpha? Would she see him not just as a leader, but as a man? You see, recently one of his close beta friends had just been mated, and this just made he long for it. Jack, his good friend, told him of how happy he is and how his wolf has come to life after the mating ritual. How it feels like his wolf had been given a renewed energy and vigor. And he wondered when he would find this and feel all these. These questions swirled in his mind as the day wore on. By the time the sun began to set, painting the sky in hues of orange and pink, Noah found himself back on the porch, staring out at the horizon once more. "You'll know her when you see her," his wolf repeated, its tone unshakable. Noah exhaled deeply, the tension in his shoulders easing slightly. "All right, fate," he murmured, a small smile tugging at his lips. "I'm trusting you. Don't let me down." Chapter 3. The forest has always been my sanctuary, but that day, it became my battleground. And just when I thought it would also be my grave, he appeared. The wind whispered through the trees, carrying with it the faint scent of pine and damp earth. The forest was unusually quiet that day, as if the birds and small creatures could sense something was amiss. I'd ventured farther than usual, drawn by the need for solitude, and maybe a little danger. Being alone wasn't just a habit anymore. It was a shield, a way to protect myself from everything that hurt. I didn't plan to stay out long, just enough to clear my head. The towering trees and the soft crunch of leaves beneath my boots were the only things grounding me. But something was off. My wolf stirred uneasily inside me, her instincts sharper than my own. "Something's wrong," she murmured. I slowed my pace, my senses sharpening. The air felt heavier here, laced with an unfamiliar scent. It was wild and feral, tinged with aggression. Rogue shifters. I froze, my heart pounding. The stories of rogue attacks had been spreading through the pack for weeks. They were exiles, wolves who had been cast out from their own packs, now banding together to steal, destroy, and destabilize. And I just walked straight into their territory. The first growl came from my left, low and menacing. My head snapped toward the sound, and I caught a glimpse of yellow eyes gleaming. Another growl echoed from behind me, then another to my right. They were circling me. "Run," my wolf urged. But I couldn't move. My feet felt rooted to the ground. My breath caught in my throat. It wasn't fear that paralyzed me, it was anger. After everything I'd been through, was this how it was going to end? Alone, ambushed in the forest by a group of outcast wolves? The first rogue lunged, and instinct took over. I shifted midair, my wolf bursting forth with a snarl. We collided, rolling through the underbrush in a flurry of claws and teeth. I felt the sharp sting of claws raking my side, but I didn't stop. I fought with everything I had, but there were too many of them. A second wolf tackled me, pinning me to the ground. I snapped at him, my teeth grazing his shoulder, but he didn't budge. Another one joined, his jaws closing around my hind leg. Pain shot through me, and I howled in agony. This is it, I thought bitterly. This is how it ends. And then, like a bolt of lightning, he appeared. A massive black wolf barreled into the fray, a growl so powerful it seemed to shake the earth. The rogues hesitated, their confidence wavering as they recognized the alpha. But hesitation wasn't enough to save them. Noah tore into them with a ferocity I'd never seen, his movements swift and precise. One rogue tried to run, but Noah was faster. He caught the wolf by the neck, tossing him into a tree with a sickening crack. Another rogue lunged, but Noah was ready, his claws raking across the wolf's chest and sending him crashing to the ground. The remaining rogues scattered, their snarls turning to whimpers as they disappeared into the forest. Noah shifted back, standing tall and unyielding, his chest heaving as he watched them flee. His dark hair was tousled, his sharp eyes scanning the area for any remaining threats. And then, his gaze fell on me. I was still in wolf form, my injured leg trembling as I tried to stand. He approached slowly, his expression softening as he knelt beside me. "Sage," he said, his voice low and steady. "It's okay. You're safe now." Something in his tone broke through my defenses, and I shifted back, collapsing into his arms. His warmth enveloped me, a stark contrast to the cold fear that had gripped me moments before. How did you know I was here?" I whispered, my voice barely audible. He didn't answer right away. His eyes, deep and unyielding, seemed to hold 1,000 unspoken words. And then, he said something that sent a shiver down my spine. "I felt something," he murmured. "I felt that you needed me." Earlier that day Noah had been passing through the town like he usually does, where he saw a magician that beckoned on him to come. He resisted at first, but as the magician said, "You will find what you seek," he obliged, and there the magician told him a few things and ended with, "Save a life to save your life," then spraying a powder that looked like fairy dust towards his face. As we were still in the forest and I in his hands, his wolf stirred within him, a powerful force that seemed to resonate with something inside me. For a moment, it was as if the world had narrowed to just the two of us. My wolf, battered but still strong, stirred in recognition. "He's ours," she whispered, her voice filled with certainty. But Noah pulled back, his jaw tightening. Whatever he'd felt, whatever his wolf had revealed to him, he wasn't ready to share it. "Not yet. You need to get back to the pack house," he said, his tone firm. "You're hurt." I wanted to protest, to tell him I could take care of myself, but the pain in my leg and the exhaustion in my body said otherwise. Reluctantly, I nodded, allowing him to help me stand. As we made our way back, I couldn't shake the feeling that something had shifted between us. There was a tension, a connection, that hadn't been there before. And though Noah remained silent, I could feel the weight of his gaze on me, as if he was seeing me in a way he never had before. He saved me. But it wasn't just my life he saved. It was something deeper, something I didn't fully understand yet. And maybe, just maybe, it was something worth fighting for. Chapter 4. Sometimes, the strongest bonds are forged in the quiet moments, the ones no one else sees but leave an imprint on your soul. Joan was the kind of person you noticed immediately, not because she sought attention, but because she carried herself with a quiet confidence that demanded respect. A skilled warrior, she came from a family known for their loyalty and strength, traits she embodied in everything she did. Her reputation in the pack was solid, dependable, fierce, and unwavering in her dedication to protecting their community. But there was another side to Joan, one that most people didn't see. Beneath the steely exterior was a heart as big as the forest they called home. She wasn't one for grand gestures or flowery words, but when she saw someone in need, she didn't hesitate to step in. That was how she found me. It was a few weeks after Ben had left. I was sitting by the river, trying to drown out the ache in my chest with the sound of rushing water. I thought I was alone. But Joan appeared out of nowhere, her sharp gaze softening when she saw the tears I hadn't realized were streaming down my face. She didn't ask what was wrong or offer hollow platitudes. Instead, she sat beside me, silent and steady, her presence grounding me in a way I hadn't felt in a long time. After what felt like hours, she finally spoke. "You don't have to talk about it if you don't want to. But if you ever do, I'm here." It was such a simple thing, but it meant the world to me. From that day on, Joan became my anchor. She didn't push me to heal or force me to move on. She just stayed, and slowly, piece by piece, I started to rebuild myself with her by my side. Joan's friendship with Noah was a different story entirely. The two of them had been inseparable for years, their bond rooted in shared experiences and a mutual respect that went deeper than words. It all started with a rock, not just any rock, but a small, smooth stone with a faint blue sheen that Noah's father had given him before he died. Noah had carried that rock with him everywhere, a tangible reminder of his father's wisdom and strength. But one day, during a skirmish with a rival pack, it had slipped from his pocket. He hadn't realized it was missing until much later, and by then he assumed it was gone forever. Joan had found it a week later while patrolling the forest. She recognized it immediately, having seen Noah fiddling with it countless times during pack meetings. When she handed it back to him, his expression was one she'd never forget, a mix of gratitude, relief, and something unspoken that cemented their friendship in that moment. "Don't go losing this again," she had teased, grinning. "Next time, I might not be around to save your sentimental ass." From then on, the two were a team. Whether it was sparring in the training grounds, strategizing for the pack, or sharing a drink after a long day, Joan and Noah had each other's backs. Their dynamic was easy and unpretentious, built on a foundation of trust and an endless supply of good-natured ribbing. One evening, after a particularly grueling training session, Joan and Noah sat on the porch of the pack house, nursing cold drinks and watching the sun dip below the horizon. The air was heavy with the scent of earth and pine, and the sound of crickets filled the silence between them. "You're quieter than usual," Joan said, breaking the stillness. "What's on your mind?" Noah sighed, leaning back against the railing. "Just thinking about the pack." Joan raised an eyebrow in sage, a knowing smirk tugging at her lips. "Ah, the mysterious sage. You know you're not as subtle as you think. Half the pack's already buzzing about how you look at her." Noah shot her a warning glance, but she only laughed. "Relax, Alpha. I'm not going to tell anyone. But seriously, what's stopping you?" He didn't answer right away, his gaze fixed on the horizon. "It's complicated," he admitted finally. "She's been through a lot and I don't want to push her. Plus, the elders." Joan snorted. "The elders can stuff it. You're the alpha. If you want to pursue her, that's your choice. And honestly, I think she's good for you." Noah looked at her, his expression softening. "Thanks, Joan. I mean it." Joan leaned back, grinning mischievously. "Of course, if it doesn't work out and you end up old and wrinkly, I'll gladly take one for the team and mate with you. Someone has to keep you in line." Noah laughed, the sound deep and genuine. "I'll keep that in mind." As the night deepened, Joan's thoughts drifted to Sage. She'd seen the way Noah looked at her, the way his usually steady demeanor softened in her presence. And though she teased him relentlessly, she hoped with all her heart that he'd find the happiness he deserved. After all, if anyone could handle the weight of being the alpha's mate, it was Sage. Here's hoping fate knows what it's doing, Joan murmured to herself, the stars above twinkling in silent agreement. Chapter 5. Healing isn't a straight line. It's more like a spiral. You think you're making progress, and then you slip back into the pain. But each time, you get a little stronger, a little braver. At least, that's what I keep telling myself. The training grounds were alive with the sound of snapping jaws, growls, and the occasional cheer of encouragement. The younger wolves were working hard, their movements sharp and eager as they practiced basic defensive maneuvers. I stood off to the side, arms crossed, trying to blend into the background. It was Joan's idea, of course. "You're too strong to keep hiding," she'd said, dragging me out of my comfort zone. "The pack needs you, Sage. And honestly, I think you need them, too." At first, I resisted. The thought of putting myself out there, of being seen after everything that had happened, made my chest tighten with anxiety. But Joan had a way of pushing me without making me feel pushed. And so here I was, pretending I wasn't shaking on the inside. A young wolf, barely more than a pup, lunged forward, her movements uncoordinated but full of determination. Her sparring partner, a boy around the same age, sidestepped easily, and she stumbled, landing hard on the ground. Before I realized what I was doing, I was stepping forward. "Try shifting your weight more to your back leg," I said, my voice steady despite the nerves clawing at me. "It'll give you better balance." The girl looked up at me, her wide eyes filled with a mixture of awe and embarrassment. "Really?" I nodded. "Here, let me show you." I crouched beside her, demonstrating the stance and explaining the mechanics in simple terms. Slowly, her expression shifted from uncertainty to confidence. She tried again, and this time her movements were smoother, more deliberate. When she landed a hit on her sparring partner, her grin was so bright it made my chest ache. "That was amazing," she said, her excitement contagious. "Thank you." I smiled, a small, tentative thing, but genuine. "You're welcome. Keep practicing, and you'll get even better." Joan sauntered over, her arms crossed and a smirk on her face. "Look at you, Miss Mentor. You're a natural." I rolled my eyes, but there was no heat behind it. "Don't get used to it. I'm just filling in for today." "Sure you are," Joan said, her tone dripping with sarcasm. "But admit it, you liked it." I didn't respond, but the truth was I had. Helping the younger wolves, seeing their enthusiasm and determination, reminded me of something I'd almost forgotten. I wasn't as broken as I thought I was. There was still strength in me, even if it was buried deep. Later that afternoon, I stayed behind after the others had left, tidying up the training area. The sun was low in the sky, casting long shadows across the ground. I was so lost in thought that I didn't notice Noah until he spoke. "You did good today." I jumped, spinning around to face him. He was leaning against a tree, his arms crossed and a faint smile playing on his lips. His presence was steady, like the earth beneath my feet, and for a moment, I didn't know how to respond. It wasn't a big deal," I said finally, brushing a strand of hair behind my ear. Joan dragged me into it. "Maybe," Noah said, pushing off the tree and stepping closer. "But you didn't have to stay. You chose to." His words settled over me like a warm blanket, and I found myself unable to meet his gaze. There was something about the way he looked at me, like he saw more than just the pieces I was trying to hold together. It made me feel exposed, but not in a bad way. "The pack notices, you know," he said after a moment. "Continue like this, and you will get the respect you deserve." My throat tightened, and I swallowed hard. "I don't know about that." Noah tilted his head, his eyes soft but unwavering. "I do?" The weight of his words lingered as he turned to leave, his footsteps quiet but deliberate. And for the first time in a long time, I felt a spark of something I hadn't allowed myself to feel in months: hope. That evening, as I sat by the fire in the pack house, Joan plopped down beside me with a sly grin. "So, Alpha Noah, huh?" I groaned, burying my face in my hands. "Don't start." "Oh, I'm starting," she said, nudging me with her elbow. "He was watching you like a hawk today. And don't even try to tell me you didn't notice." I shook my head, but my cheeks betrayed me, heating under her teasing gaze. "He was just being nice. That's what alphas do." Joan snorted. Sure. And I'm just being nice when I let you steal the last cookie. Face it, Sage, he likes you. I didn't respond, but her words stayed with me long after she left. Because deep down, a part of me wanted to believe she was right. And that part, it terrified me. Maybe I'm not as alone as I thought. Maybe, just maybe, there's something worth fighting for after all. Chapter 6. Power doesn't just attract loyalty, it also breeds resentment. And in a pack, resentment is a poison that can spread faster than anyone realizes. The elders of the pack gathered in the council chamber, a large, circular room at the heart of the pack house. The walls were lined with shelves holding ancient texts and relics from generations past, reminders of the weight of their history and traditions. The air inside was heavy, carrying the scent of polished wood and faint traces of incense. Noah entered the chamber, his footsteps firm but quiet. He didn't sit at the head of the table, despite being the alpha. That wasn't his style. Instead, he chose a seat near the middle, a gesture that had always endeared him to the elders. It was his way of saying, I lead with you, not above you. The elders, a mix of men and women with graying hair and sharp eyes, greeted him with polite nods. At their center was Elder Hawthorne, a shrewd and respected figure who had served the pack for decades. His voice carried the authority of someone who had seen it all, and when he spoke, people listened. Alpha Noah, Hawthorne began, his tone measured. Thank you for joining us. There are matters that require your attention. Noah inclined his head. Of course. Let's get started. The first half of the meeting was dedicated to pressing issues that had been simmering for weeks. The rogue shifters were growing bolder, their attacks more coordinated. Scouts reported sightings of their leaders rallying new recruits, and the tension at the borders was palpable. They're not just scavengers anymore, said Elder Miriam, her voice tinged with worry. They're organizing. If we don't act soon, they could become a real threat. Noah nodded, his jaw tightening. We've already increased patrols along the borders. I've also ordered more supplies for the fighters. But you're right, we need a strategy that goes beyond defense. I'll consult with the betas and put together a plan to root them out before they gain more ground. The elders murmured their approval, though their expressions remained tense. The rogue problem wasn't just a matter of territory. It was a challenge to the pack's strength and stability. And if there was one thing the elders valued above all else, it was stability. The conversation shifted to other matters: resource allocation, preparations for the upcoming festival, and the training of the younger wolves. Noah listened intently, offering his input where needed, his calm demeanor a steadying presence in the room. But as the meeting wound down, the atmosphere shifted. The elders exchanged glances, a silent conversation passing between them. Finally, Elder Hawthorne cleared his throat. There is one more issue we need to address, he said, his gaze settling on Noah. It concerns you, Alpha. Noah arched an eyebrow, leaning back slightly in his chair. Go on. Hawthorne hesitated, as if weighing his words carefully. It has come to our attention that you may be considering a mate. The room fell silent, the weight of his statement hanging in the air. Noah's expression didn't change, but a flicker of surprise crossed his eyes. He hadn't spoken openly about his feelings for Sage. Only to Joan, but he knew her and he knew she wouldn't tell the elders. She felt they were douchebags sometimes. Nor would she tell anyone else. Noah trusted her with his life. And yet here it was, laid bare before the council. I wasn't aware this was a matter for council discussion, Noah said evenly, his voice calm but firm. Ordinarily it wouldn't be, Hawthorne replied. But the circumstances are unique. Noah's gaze sharpened. What circumstances? Elder Miriam leaned forward, her hands clasped tightly in front of her. The girl in question, Sage. She's not of a strong bloodline. Her parents were not high-ranking members of the pack, and she has no family ties to bolster her position. Some believe that this could weaken the alpha line. Noah's jaw tightened, the calm facade cracking just slightly. And who exactly is some? The elders exchanged uneasy glances, but no one answered. It was clear they weren't going to reveal their source. But Noah could feel the truth simmering beneath the surface. Someone had brought this to their attention. Someone with their own agenda. Do you have any idea who might have told you this? Noah asked, his tone sharp. Elder Hawthorne shook his head. The information was brought to us anonymously, but the motives behind it could be varied. You know as well as we do that your choice of mate carries weight, not just for you, but for all of us. Noah leaned forward, his gaze steely. My choice of mate is exactly that, my choice. And it will be based on more than bloodlines or politics. It will be based on what's best for the pack, and for me. The room grew tense, the silence stretching thin. Finally, Elder Miriam spoke, her voice softer this time. No one doubts your judgment, Alpha. But you must understand, there are those in the pack who see tradition as a cornerstone of our strength. And tradition dictates that the Alpha's mate should be someone of equal standing. Noah's eyes narrowed. Sage is stronger than most wolves I know. She's proven that time and time again. Her worth isn't measured by her bloodline. And anyone who thinks otherwise is a fool. The elders shifted uncomfortably, but none of them argued. Noah's authority as Alpha was absolute, and challenging him directly was not something they were willing to do. But the tension in the room was undeniable. As the meeting concluded, Noah lingered behind, his thoughts churning. Someone in the pack had gone out of their way to bring this to the elders' attention. And while the identity of the informant remained a mystery, one thing was clear. They weren't done causing trouble. I don't care who you are, Noah thought, his jaw clenched. If you think you can manipulate me or undermine Sage, you're in for a rude awakening. But as he left the chamber and stepped into the cool evening air, another thought crept in unbidden. What if the elders were right? What if his feelings for Sage, as strong as they were, led to complications he couldn't foresee? His wolf growled softly, a low, comforting sound. She's your mate. You know it. They'll see it too eventually. Noah exhaled, the tension in his shoulders easing slightly. His wolf was right. Fate had a way of silencing doubts, and when the time came, no one would question his choice. Let them whisper, he muttered to himself. In the end, they will see what I see. Sage was strong-willed and a great person. All those years of being alone she trained, increases her combat skills, and became an excellent trainer herself. But she fell in love with Ben, and that made her lose her self-worth. Nao strangely has always noticed Sage, but due to responsibilities and him training to be stronger, faster and better to be able to lead didn't allow him make a move. So he was already in love with her even before his wolf cried out to him, saying she was his mate. Fate truly has lots of tricks up its sleeves. But as he walked away from the pack house, the shadow of the anonymous informant loomed large in his mind. Whoever they were, they had made their move, and no one knew it was only a matter of time before they will do something. Chapter 7. There's something about the river. The way it flows, endlessly moving forward. It reminds me that life keeps going, even when you feel stuck. And sometimes, if you're lucky, it takes you somewhere unexpected. The sun hung low in the sky, its golden light shimmering across the surface of the river. The soft rustle of leaves and the gentle babble of water were the only sounds, a symphony of nature that always seemed to calm me. This spot had become my refuge, a place where I could think without the weight of the pack pressing down on me. I wasn't expecting anyone to be there that evening, so when I spotted a figure sitting by the water's edge, I hesitated, unsure whether to stay or turn back. It didn't take long to recognize him. Even from a distance, Noah's presence was unmistakable. He sat on a large rock, his elbows resting on his knees, staring out at the river with a faraway look in his eyes. The golden light of the setting sun framed him, making him look almost otherworldly. For a moment, I just stood there, watching him. He looked different, quieter somehow. Less like the Alpha everyone saw and more like just Noah. Before I could think better of it, I stepped forward, my boots crunching softly against the dirt. His head turned slightly at the sound, and when his eyes met mine, a small, almost shy smile tugged at his lips. Didn't expect to see you here, I said, stopping a few steps away. He gestured to the space beside him. Come sit. The river's better when you share it. I hesitated, my heart doing a little flip at his invitation. But then I walked over and lowered myself onto the rock beside him. For a while neither of us spoke. We just sat there, listening to the water and the wind, letting the quiet stretch between us. And for once, the silence wasn't uncomfortable. Finally I broke it. You come here often? I asked, my voice soft. He nodded, his gaze still fixed on the water. Used to. Haven't had much time lately. Too many responsibilities, too many fires to put out. Sometimes literally. I laughed softly, the sound surprising even me. I know the feeling. The world doesn't stop, does it? He turned to look at me, his expression thoughtful. No, it doesn't. But it helps coming here. Makes everything feel smaller. I nodded, understanding exactly what he meant. This place had the same effect on me. It made the weight of my past, the ache in my heart, feel a little less crushing. I understood what he meant and I added, "It's the only place I feel like I can breathe," I admitted. When everything feels like it's too much, this is where I come to remind myself that I'm still here. That I'm still me. He nodded like he understood. And maybe he did. Noah had always seemed to carry the weight of the pack so effortlessly. But sitting here with him, I realized how heavy that weight must really be. "You're stronger than you think," he said suddenly, his voice firm. "You've been through so much, and yet you're still standing. You're still fighting. That says a lot about who you are, Sage." I looked away, my throat tightening. "I don't feel strong most of the time. That's the thing about strength," he said. "You don't have to feel it for it to be there. Sometimes, it's just in the fact that you keep going, even when it's hard." His words settled over me like a warm blanket, and for the first time in a long time I felt seen. Truly seen. Without thinking, I leaned into him, resting my head on his shoulder. He didn't pull away. Instead, he shifted slightly, making it easier for me to settle against him. His warmth seeped into me, steady and comforting, and for a moment, I let myself forget about everything else. We sat like that, watching the river, the quiet wrapping around us like a cocoon. My wolf stirred inside me, her presence calm but alert, as if she, too, recognized the significance of this moment. I turned my head slightly, and our eyes met. There was something in his gaze, something raw and unguarded, that made me loose my breath. Slowly, almost hesitantly, we began to lean toward each other, the space between us shrinking. And then, well, isn't this cozy? The voice shattered the moment like glass, and I jerked back, my heart pounding. Noah sighed, his expression caught somewhere between amusement and exasperation. Joan stood a few feet away, a sly grin on her face and her arms crossed. "Should I come back later? Or should I just start planning the wedding now?" I groaned, burying my face in my hands. "Joan." "What?" "Don't blame me for having perfect timing," she said, winking. "You two look like you were about to reenact some cheesy romance novel scene." I was half expecting rose petals to fall from the sky. Noah shook his head, a small smile tugging at his lips. "What do you want, Joan?" "Nothing," she said, still grinning. "Just making sure you're not slacking off, Alpha." I couldn't help but laugh, despite my embarrassment. Joan had a way of diffusing tension that was both infuriating and endearing. "All right, you've had your fun," Noah said, standing and offering me a hand. "Let's head back before she starts writing poetry about us." I took his hand, the warmth of his touch lingering even after I let go. As we walked back toward the pack house, I couldn't stop the smile that crept onto my face. Maybe the river had taken me somewhere unexpected after all. Chapter 8. The past has a way of clawing its way back, no matter how far you think you've run from it. And when it collides with the present, it can leave everything in ruins. The pack house courtyard was alive with its usual buzz of activity. Wolves milled about, some sparring, others chatting in small groups, their laughter carrying on the breeze. I stood near the edge, leaning against a wooden post, watching the scene unfold with a distant sort of detachment. Ever since Joan's interruption at the river, my thoughts had been a jumbled mess of confusion and longing, emotions I wasn't ready to confront. That's when I saw him. Ben emerged from the training grounds, his dark hair damp with sweat, and his shirt clinging to his frame. He looked the same as he always had, handsome, confident, with that familiar smirk that used to make my heart skip a beat. But today that smirk was gone. His eyes found mine almost instantly, and the weight of his gaze pinned me in place. He was heading straight for me. I straightened, my wolf stirring uneasily. Not now, I thought, dread curling in my stomach. Whatever he wanted, it couldn't be good. But Ben didn't stop in front of me. He brushed past, his shoulders tense, and kept walking, right toward Noah. Noah was standing near the center of the courtyard, talking with a group of betas about patrol rotations. He looked every bit the alpha. Calm, commanding, and completely in control. But when Ben approached, the tension in the air shifted. "We need to talk," Ben said, his voice low but sharp. Noah dismissed the betas with a nod, his eyes narrowing as he turned to face his brother. "What's this about?" "You know damn well what it's about," Ben snapped, his voice rising. "Don't play dumb with me." By now, the courtyard had gone quiet. Conversations halted as wolves turned to watch the brewing confrontation. I felt my chest tighten, the uneasy hum of my wolf growing louder. Whatever this was, it wasn't going to end well. "If you have something to say, Ben, say it," Noah said, his tone even but laced with warning. Ben stepped closer, his jaw clenched. "How long has this been going on?" Noah frowned. "What are you talking about?" Ben's eyes flicked to me, then back to Noah. "You and Sage. Don't act like I don't see it. The way you look at her, the way you're always around her. You're my brother, Noah. How could you do this to me?" The accusation hit like a thunderclap, and I froze, my heart pounding in my chest. The wolves around us exchanged murmurs, their curiosity evident. Noah's expression darkened, and for a moment, I thought he might lose the calm composure he always carried. "Ben," Noah said slowly, his voice dangerously low. "You need to stop." "Stop what?" "Calling you out." Ben laughed bitterly, but there was no humor in it. "You've been circling her ever since I left." The words hung in the air, heavy and unyielding. Ben's face twisted with anger, and he stepped closer, his voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. "She was mine. That was it. The breaking point." "Enough!" I shouted, pushing myself away from the post and stepping between them. My voice cut through the tension like a blade, and both men turned to look at me. My hands were trembling, but I didn't care. I'd had enough. "You don't get to do this," I said, glaring at Ben. "You don't get to walk away and then act like you still have some claim over me. You made your choice. You left." Ben's eyes widened, the anger in them flickering into something else. Regret, maybe. But I wasn't done. "And for the record," I continued, my voice rising, "I've moved on. Whatever you think is happening between me and Noah, it isn't. There's nothing going on." The words tumbled out before I could stop them, and the moment they did, I knew I'd made a mistake. I didn't have to look at Noah to know how much they hurt him. I could feel it, like a punch to the gut, but I couldn't take them back. Ben's expression shifted, his anger softening into something almost hopeful. He opened his mouth to say something, but I cut him off. "But that doesn't mean anything for you and me either," I said, my voice firm. "We're done, Ben. Whatever we had, it's over. You need to accept that and move on." His face fell, the hope extinguished as quickly as it had appeared. For a moment, he just stood there, his shoulders slumping as the weight of my words sank in. Then he turned and walked away, his steps heavy and slow. The courtyard was silent, the tension thick enough to cut with a knife. I turned to look at Noah, my chest tightening at the expression on his face. He was watching me, his eyes dark and unreadable, but there was no mistaking the hurt beneath them. "Noah, I started," but he shook his head. "It's fine," he said, his voice quiet. "You don't owe me an explanation." Before I could say anything else, he turned and walked away, leaving me standing there in the middle of the courtyard, feeling more alone than I had in weeks. Why does it always end like this? I whispered to myself, the sound of my own voice lost in the murmurs of the pack as they slowly went back to their routines. That night, as I sat by the fire in my room, the events of the day replayed in my mind. Ben's accusations, Noah's quiet pain, the words I'd thrown out without thinking. My wolf stirred restlessly, her unease mirroring my own. "You pushed him away," she said, her voice a soft growl in the back of my mind. "Why?" I didn't have an answer. Maybe it was fear. Maybe it was the lingering scars Ben had left behind. Or maybe it was something else entirely, something I wasn't ready to face. But as the fire crackled and the night stretched on, one thought refused to leave me. I couldn't keep running from the people who cared about me. And if I wasn't careful, I might lose them both for good. "I have to figure this out," I whispered, my voice barely audible. "Before it's too late." Chapter 9. Jealousy is a silent predator. It waits, coiled and patient, striking when you least expect it. And sometimes, it hides in the people closest to you. The moon hung low in the sky, its silvery light casting long shadows over the pack house. While most of the pack rested, one figure prowled the dark corridors with a single-minded focus. Lyra, the daughter of a respected elder and a member of one of the pack's oldest and most prestigious bloodlines, moved with the grace of someone born into privilege. Her thoughts churned as she made her way to her quarters, her perfectly poised exterior masking the tempest within. She couldn't understand it. How someone like Sage, with no family, no legacy, and no claim to anything, had managed to gain Noah's attention. Lyra had worked tirelessly to uphold her family's reputation, training relentlessly, mastering every skill expected of a future alpha's mate. And yet, it was Sage who had captured his gaze. She slammed the door to her room, the sound echoing in the silence. Her wolf growled low in her chest, the frustration bubbling to the surface. "It should have been me," she muttered under her breath, pacing the length of her room. "It was always supposed to be me." Lyra had known Noah for years. She had stood beside him in countless battles, had shared moments of triumph and loss with him. She had always believed that when the time came, he would choose her. She had the bloodline, the strength, the respect of the pack elders. She was everything a mate to the alpha should be. But Sage was a nobody, a girl whose parents had died in obscurity, who had no family to vouch for her, no legacy to stand on. She had been nothing more than a broken shell after Ben left her, hiding away while the rest of the pack carried on. What could Noah possibly see in her? One day Lyra had waited until the elders were alone, then approached them under the guise of concern for the pack. "I don't mean to overstep," she had said, her tone sweet but laced with feigned worry. "But I think you should know that Alpha Noah has been spending a lot of time with Sage. I'm sure his intentions are pure, but well, you know how these things look." The elders had taken the bait, their disapproval of Sage already simmering beneath the surface. Lyra had left the chamber that day with a small, satisfied smile, confident that she had planted the seeds of doubt. But it wasn't enough. As Lyra sat at her desk, her fingers drumming against the polished wood, she knew she needed to take things further. The elders hadn't done enough to deter Noah, and Sage remained a thorn in her side. If anything, the confrontation between Noah and Ben had only made her more determined to act. She pulled out a piece of parchment and began writing, her pen moving with swift precision. It was a message to a contact outside the pack, someone who could help her execute her plan without raising suspicion. "Sage doesn't belong here," she whispered to herself as she wrote. "She's a distraction, a weakness. And weaknesses have no place in the Alpha's world." Her wolf stirred, its presence sharp and calculating. It didn't object to her plan, in fact. It seemed to relish the idea. Together, they would ensure that Sage was removed from the picture permanently. Lyra paused, her pen hovering over the parchment. For a brief moment, doubt crept in. What if she was wrong? What if Noah's bond with Sage was genuine, fated? But she pushed the thought aside. Fated or not, it didn't matter. She deserved to be the Alpha's mate. She had earned it. The next day, Lyra walked through the pack house with her usual air of confidence, her polished facade firmly in place. No one would suspect her of anything. She was too well-liked, too respected. But beneath the surface, her mind was already calculating her next move. She caught sight of Sage in the courtyard, speaking with Joan and a group of young wolves. There was a lightness in Sage's demeanor that hadn't been there before, a spark of confidence that made Lyra's stomach twist. It only solidified her resolve. As she turned away, her thoughts darkened. Let them think she's stronger. Let them believe she belongs. By the time I'm finished, she'll be nothing more than a memory. That night, as the pack slept, Lyra sat by the window in her room, watching the moonlight spill over the forest. The parchment she had written earlier was folded neatly in her lap, ready to be delivered. She didn't know what the future held, but she knew one thing for certain. Sage wouldn't be a part of it. The Alpha needs a mate worthy of his title, and I'll make sure he gets one. Chapter 10. Conflict doesn't come all at once. It creeps in little by little, like cracks in a foundation. And if you don't catch it in time, it can bring everything down. The first sign of trouble came just before dawn. A patrol of scouts, returning from the northern border, burst into the pack house with grim faces and hurried steps. Their clothes were torn, their skin streaked with dirt and blood. Noah met them in the courtyard, his expression sharpening into something cold and deadly the moment he saw them. "What happened?" he asked, his voice steady despite the urgency in his eyes. One of the scouts, a wiry young wolf named Micah, stepped forward, his hands trembling. "Rogues," he said, his voice hoarse. "They ambushed us near the river bend. We managed to fight them off, but they're growing bolder. They're testing our defenses." Noah's jaw tightened, his wolf stirring with a low, simmering growl. "How many?" "5," Micah replied. But they weren't scattered like before. They moved together like a unit. It was organized. That word hung in the air, heavy with implication. Organized. The rogues weren't just a nuisance anymore. They were becoming a threat. Noah dismissed the scouts, sending them to the healers to tend to their wounds. But as they walked away, he remained in the courtyard, his fists clenched at his sides. The pack was strong, but a coordinated attack from the rogues could put them all at risk. "We need to prepare," his wolf said, its voice steady but urgent. "This isn't going to stop." Noah nodded to himself, already forming a plan. The news of the rogue attack spread quickly through the pack, and by midday, the training grounds were full. Wolves of all ranks gathered, their usual chatter replaced by a sense of grim determination. Joan stood at the front, barking instructions as the younger wolves practiced their forms. I watched from the sidelines, my arms crossed. Part of me wanted to jump in, to let my wolf stretch and feel the rush of battle again. But I held back, unsure of where I fit into all of this. Joan caught sight of me and waved me over. "Come on, Sage," she called. "Don't just stand there. Let's see what you've got." I hesitated, but the expectant looks from the younger wolves left me with little choice. Stepping onto the field, I squared my shoulders, ignoring the flutter of nerves in my stomach. Joan paired me with a younger wolf named Lila, a scrappy girl with bright eyes and quick reflexes. The first few rounds were easy enough, basic moves, nothing I couldn't handle. But as Joan ramped up the difficulty, I found myself falling into a rhythm. My wolf surged forward, guiding my movements with precision and power. Every dodge, every strike felt sharper, more deliberate. By the time Joan called for a break, Lila was panting and grinning, her eyes shining with respect. "You're really good," she said, her voice full of admiration. I smiled, a small but genuine thing. "Thanks. You're not bad yourself." The other wolves began to gather around, their curiosity piqued. Joan clapped me on the back, her grin wide. "Told you she's a natural." The praise warmed me, but it also made me uneasy. As much as I appreciated the recognition, I couldn't shake the feeling that someone was watching me. That someone was Lyra. From her vantage point near the edge of the training grounds, she watched the scene unfold, her expression unreadable. Every laugh, every cheer for Sage sent a fresh wave of resentment surging through her. "They're fools," she muttered to herself. "All of them. Just because she's good at a few sparring matches doesn't mean she's worthy of him." Her wolf stirred restlessly, mirroring her frustration. "She's gaining their favor. If this continues, they'll accept her. Even the elders might change their minds." Lyra's hands curled into fists, her nails biting into her palms. She couldn't let that happen. Not after everything she'd done, everything she'd worked for. "No," she thought, her eyes narrowing. "She's still a nobody, and I'll make sure she stays that way." Meanwhile, Noah was in the council chamber, strategizing with his betas. A map of the territory lay spread across the table, marked with red X's where rogue sightings had been reported. "They're focusing on the northern and western borders," one of the betas said, pointing to the map. "Probably trying to cut off our supply routes." Noah nodded, his gaze sweeping over the map. "We'll double patrols in those areas. Joan, I want you to lead the northern team. Make sure they're ready for anything." Joan nodded, her expression serious. "Consider it done." By the time the sun dipped below the horizon, the pack was buzzing with activity. Patrols were organized, weapons were sharpened, and the air was thick with anticipation. As I walked back to my room, exhausted but satisfied with the day's progress, I caught sight of Noah standing near the edge of the courtyard. He was speaking with Joan, his expression focused but calm. For a moment I hesitated, debating whether to approach him. But before I could make up my mind, he glanced in my direction and smiled. It was a small gesture, but it sent a warmth through me that I couldn't quite explain. Maybe, I thought, I'm stronger than I give myself credit for. But as I turned and walked away, I couldn't shake the feeling that the storm was far from over. Chapter 11. Sometimes, you need someone who sees the whole picture when you're too caught up in your own mess. For me, that someone was Joan. Joan had always been the glue that held things together. Whether it was during a crisis or an awkward silence at dinner, she had a way of making things work, of bringing people together. And lately, she decided that the people who needed bringing together most were Noah and me. It started with little things, subtle nudges that didn't seem obvious at first. Like when she'd make a point to leave us alone at training sessions, or when she'd invite both of us to a casual evening drink, and then conveniently disappear halfway through. It was clear what she was doing, but I didn't have the heart to call her out on it. Partly because it seemed to make her so damn happy, and partly because, deep down, I didn't hate the idea. One morning, I found Joan waiting for me outside the pack house, her arms crossed and an eager grin on her face. The sun was just starting to rise, casting golden light over the forest, and the air was crisp with the promise of a new day. "You're coming with me," she said, no preamble, no explanation. I raised an eyebrow. "Good morning to you, too. Where are we going?" "Training grounds," she replied, grabbing my arm and dragging me along. "There's a group of younger wolves who need sparring partners, and you're perfect for the job." I groaned but let her pull me along. Joan had a way of convincing you to do things before you realized you'd agreed to them. The training grounds were already buzzing with activity when we arrived. Joan directed the younger wolves with her usual no-nonsense style, shouting instructions and correcting stances. She paired me with a boy who looked barely old enough to shift, his movements clumsy but enthusiastic. "Keep your stance lower," I said, dodging one of his wild swings. "It'll give you better balance." He nodded, adjusting his position, and I couldn't help but smile. There was something satisfying about watching them improve, knowing I was helping in some small way. Out of the corner of my eye, I caught sight of Noah. He was standing at the edge of the training grounds, his arms crossed as he watched us. His presence was steady and commanding as always, but there was a softness in his gaze when it landed on me, a quiet pride that sent a warmth through my chest. Joan noticed, of course. She always noticed. "You see that," she said, nudging me with her elbow. "He's watching you like a hawk, and not just because you're good at sparring." I rolled my eyes, trying to ignore the heat rising to my cheeks. "He's just making sure the training runs smoothly." Joan snorted. "Sure he is. And I'm just here for the snacks." Later that afternoon, Joan and I sat by the river, cooling off after the training session. She stretched out on the grass, her arms behind her head, and stared up at the sky. "You know," she said after a while, "you and Noah make a good team." I glanced at her, unsure where she was going with this. "In what way?" "In every way," she said, turning to look at me. "You balance each other out. He's calm and steady, and you've got this fire in you. Together, you'd be unstoppable." I shook my head, laughing softly. "You're delusional." "Maybe," she said, grinning. "But I'm also right." As the day wore on, Joan's teasing gave way to more serious matters. The rogue shifters were becoming a constant threat, their attacks growing more coordinated and frequent. Joan had been spending more time patrolling the borders, keeping a close eye on their movements. "They're not just a nuisance anymore," she said as we walked back to the pack house. "They're planning something. I can feel it." Her tone was uncharacteristically grim, and it sent a shiver down my spine. Joan was rarely serious, but when she was, you knew to listen. "What do you think they're after?" I asked. "Territory, resources, power," she said, ticking off the possibilities on her fingers. "Maybe all three. But whatever it is, they're not stopping until they get it." The thought was a sobering one. The pack was strong, but the roads were growing bolder with every passing day. And if they managed to unite under a single leader, they could become a force to be reckoned with. That evening, Joan cornered Noah in his office. I wasn't there to hear the conversation, but I could imagine how it went. "You're working yourself to death," she probably said, crossing her arms and fixing him with one of her infamous glares. Noah would have sighed, leaning back in his chair. "The pack comes first, Joan. You know that. And who's taking care of you, huh?" she would have countered. "You can't do this alone, Noah. You need someone by your side." He wouldn't have responded to that, but knowing Joan, she wouldn't have let it go. "Sage is stronger than you think," she would have said. "She can handle this, Noah. She can handle you. You just have to let her in." By the time I saw Joan again, She was back to her usual self, cracking jokes and teasing me about my undeniable chemistry with Noah. But there was a seriousness beneath her humor, a quiet determination that reminded me of why she was so important to both of us. Joan wasn't just a friend. She was a bridge, connecting us when we couldn't quite reach each other. And as much as I resisted her meddling, part of me was grateful for it. She sees things I can't, I thought, watching her walk away with a bounce in her step. Maybe she's right. Maybe it's time to stop running. Chapter 12. Some things don't need to be said out loud to be understood. But even the strongest of us sometimes need a push to face what we're too scared to admit. The night sky stretched endlessly above the pack house, dotted with stars that seemed to flicker in time with the crackling fire in the courtyard. Noah sat on one of the wooden benches, his shoulders tense despite the calm atmosphere. He stared into the flames, the flickering light casting shadows across his face. Joan approached quietly, a mug of steaming tea in each hand. She handed one to Noah before plopping down beside him, her usual carefree energy dialed down to something softer. "You look like you've got the weight of the world on your shoulders," she said, taking a sip from her mug. Noah huffed a quiet laugh. "That's because I do." Yeah, alpha problems," she teased, bumping his shoulder lightly. "But this feels different. What's going on, Noah?" He didn't answer immediately, his gaze fixed on the fire. Joan waited, giving him the space to speak. She'd learned over the years that Noah didn't respond well to being pushed. Finally he sighed. "It's just everything." Joan raised an eyebrow. "Everything is pretty vague, even for you." He smirked, but it didn't quite reach his eyes. "The pack, the rogues, the elders breathing down my neck. It feels like there's always something." "There's always something," Joan agreed. "But you've never let it get to you before. What's different now?" Noah hesitated, his jaw tightening. "It's not just the pack," he admitted quietly. Joan tilted her head, her sharp eyes narrowing as she studied him. "It's Sage, isn't it?" The way his shoulders stiffened was all the confirmation she needed. "I thought so," she said, her tone light but knowing. "You've been staring at her like she's the only person in the room. And don't think I haven't noticed how you've been hovering around the training grounds lately." Noah shook his head, a small smile tugging at his lips. "You don't miss much, do you?" "Not when it comes to you," Joan said simply. For a moment, the only sound was the crackling of the fire. Joan sipped her tea, waiting for him to continue. "It's complicated," Noah said finally, his voice low. "She's been through so much. The last thing I want is to make things harder for her." "You think caring about her would make things harder?" Joan asked, her tone gentle but probing. Noah exhaled, running a hand through his hair. "I don't know. Maybe. She's still healing, Joan. I can see it in the way she carries herself. And with everything happening, the rogues, the elders, it's just not the right time." Joan set her mug down and turned to face him fully. "Noah, there's never going to be a perfect time. The world doesn't work like that. But if you keep waiting for the right moment, you might miss your chance altogether." He didn't respond, but the way his brows furrowed told her he was listening. "Look," she continued, softening her tone, "I'm not saying you need to march up to her and declare your undying love or whatever. But don't shut her out either. Trust your instincts. They've never steered you wrong before." Noah chuckled quietly. "You make it sound so simple." "It is simple," Joan said, shrugging. "You're the one making it complicated." They sat in silence for a while, the fire slowly dying down to glowing embers. Joan leaned back, staring forward. "You know," she said after a moment, "I think she's stronger than you give her credit for. Whatever you're worried about, I think she can handle it. You just have to trust her." Noah glanced at her, his expression unreadable. "You really believe that?" "I wouldn't say it if I didn't," Joan replied. "And honestly, if anyone deserves a shot at happiness, it's you. So stop overthinking and just let things happen." He didn't say anything, but the faint smile on his lips told her she'd gotten through to him, at least a little. "Thanks, Joan," he said quietly. She grinned, nudging him playfully. "What are best friends for?" As they sat there under the stars, Joan felt a flicker of hope. Noah might not be ready to admit his feelings out loud, but she could see the change in him. Slowly but surely, he was listening now and moving to making her his mate. Joan knew the complications, with Ben involved and all, but it was his mate and Ben and Sage weren't together. Maybe that was fate's hand. One step at a time, she thought, watching the embers fade into the night. They'll figure it out. They just need a little push every now and then. Chapter 13. Loyalty is the glue that holds a pack together. But when that glue starts to crack, it doesn't take much for everything to fall apart. The scent of the forest was heavy that morning, a mix of damp earth that carried a weight of unease. Noah stood on the porch of the pack house, his arms crossed as he surveyed the training grounds. The wolves were working harder than ever, preparing for the next inevitable attack from the rogues. But even with their increased vigilance, something felt off. Joan approached from the side, her usual casual swagger replaced by a more serious demeanor. She handed him a folded piece of paper. "Another report," she said, her tone clipped. Noah unfolded the note, his eyes scanning the hastily scrawled words. Rogue movements had been spotted near the southern border, an area that had always been relatively quiet. His brow furrowed. "The southern border," he said, glancing up at Joan. "They've never gone that far before." "That's what's worrying me," she replied. "It's like they know where we're weakest. Every move they've made lately has been calculated." Noah didn't respond immediately, his mind racing. The rogues weren't just growing bolder, they were growing smarter. Someone was feeding them information. Later that day, Sage found herself in the storage shed behind the pack house, organizing supplies for the upcoming patrols. The dim light and quiet gave her a sense of peace, a welcome break from the chaos outside. As she worked, she heard faint footsteps approaching. Turning, she saw a young wolf named Darren lingering near the doorway. He was barely out of his teens, with a wiry frame and a nervous energy that made him seem perpetually on edge. "Hey, Darren," Sage said, offering a small smile. "Need something?" He hesitated, his eyes darting around the room before settling on her. "No, just checking in," he said quickly. They told me to see if you needed help." Sage frowned slightly. "Who told you that?" Darren shrugged, his movements stiff. "Just around." There was something playful and cheesy about him. Something that seemed he was sent to spy on her, but before she could press further, he mumbled a quick goodbye and disappeared. Her mind went to Noah. Maybe he sent the kids to come spy on her. She smiled and her heart jumped with joy. That night, Noah gathered the betas for a meeting in the council chamber. The southern border reports had only confirmed his suspicions. There was a traitor in the pack. "We have to root them out," Joan said, her voice hard. "Whoever it is, they're putting all of us at risk." Noah nodded, his expression grim. "I know, but we need to be careful. If we accuse the wrong person, it could tear the pack apart." "Do you have any suspects?" one of the betas asked. Noah hesitated. "Not yet, but I have a feeling it's someone who's desperate. Someone who feels like they don't have a place here." Joan frowned. Desperation can make people do stupid things. But what's their angle? What are they getting out of this? That was the question that gnawed at Noah. The rogues didn't have much to offer. No structure, no stability. So why would someone risk everything to help them? The answer came 2 days later, when another attack hit the northern patrols. This time, the rogues had ambushed the group with alarming precision, targeting their leader and scattering the rest. The wounded wolves who made it back to the pack house described the rogues as being one step ahead at every turn. It was Joan who found the first clue. She was combing through the aftermath of the attack when she discovered a torn scrap of fabric caught on a branch. It matched the uniform of the pack scouts, but it wasn't from anyone who'd been on the patrol. She brought it straight to Noah, her expression grim. "Whoever's feeding the rogues information is close, Noah," she said, dropping the scrap of fabric onto his desk. "Close enough to have access to our patrol schedules." Noah picked up the fabric, his wolf growling low in his chest. The scent was faint but familiar.